Hey guys, what's going on? It's P. Gamboa, and in today's episode we're going to be talking about articulating running boards. I picked these up from a member on the GM Trucks forum. They came off of a 2017 Sierra Denali and currently installed on my 2016 Silverado LT. These are plug and play. There is no extra BCM programming required. All you need to do here, guys, is get the circuits installed from the module that comes with the running boards over to their locations, and these will function just like factory. So let's take a look. I'm gonna go and unlock the door. And when you open the door, these running boards will extend out. Shut the door. They will retract in. There is also another neat feature on this. Here at the back of the running board, there is a kick switch. You kick that button and the boards retract so that you have a nice step onto the back of the bed. Kick that button and it will retract it all the way back underneath the truck, tucking it nicely. And again, this was plug and play, so I'm going to show you guys what I did to get this installed and functional onto my truck. These are the fixed running boards that I have now, so I'm going to get these taken off. I picked these running boards up from a member on the forum with intentions of seeing if I can get these installed onto my 2016 Silverado LT truck. From what I've been reading, there is going to be some programming required, and after doing some discovery on the circuits, I don't know if there's going to be programming required, so I'm going to give it a go. I've got the running boards here laid out. I've gone ahead and pulled the module out. So this module here essentially is installed on the driver's side board, and this guy essentially is just seated in there like such. And so on this guy, you've got two connectors, and after doing some wiring chasing, it seems that the running boards interface in and out of this module left and right. So from this module itself, I was able to track down 4 circuits that leave this module and head towards the front of the truck. Power, ground, I think there's a low speed GM LAN circuit, and a running board disable. So we're gonna get this wired up. A couple of things on here is the person that took this off his truck disconnected the harnesses from his chassis, and unfortunately the chassis harness is one big harness that feeds everything under the truck. So we're going to have to make up connections to go from the running board connector to the module, and then from the other running board as well into the module. So most of the circuits are going to interface with this. I believe this is a 12-way connector. Yeah, this is a 12-way connector. And then you've got a 6-way connector. So most of the circuits are going to interface in and out from the running boards into this guy. And then the 4 circuits that are going to be heading up to the front of the truck are going to interface out of this guy. So I've got a wiring diagram that I drew up for this. So we're going to get these physically installed, and we'll see if we can get these to work. So since these boards are heavy, I am going to have to use a crate to get one side up while I get the rear sides bolted up. So if you have help, it would be great to get some help, as this may be a 2-person job. So I've got the driver's side running board physically installed. There were a couple of holes that I had to get bolts mounted onto. They are existing, so I ended up having to use the extra nutsert clips into those spots. So it was a direct bolt on. So we'll get the other side on, and then we'll get the wiring in place. Well, I've got the passenger side installed, and that concludes the physical installation. Now let's get on to the fun part, and that's the wiring. All right, so after doing some digging here, I did come across this connector by the fuse block under the hood. This connector is the X138 connector that I'm looking for. And what I've done here is I made this drawing with some cross references. There are 2 circuits here specifically that I need to land on this X138 connector, and that's going to be the running board disable circuit, pin number 39, and this GM local area network circuit, pin number 8. And so this is a 40-pin connector, the X138 chassis harness to body harness. and it is indeed this connector here. So when I remove this connector, I did investigate, and on this connector, pin 8 and pin 39 are indeed missing. So if I zoom in here, you can see that pin 8 here in this top left corner is missing, and pin 39 down here is also missing. Now I did look into the mate end, this guy here, and those connectors or those pins are there. So that's good news. Pin 8 is going to be this top right corner here, and pin 39 is going to be just this pin right here. So as long as I can make this landing onto this guy here, this should be a pretty fairly easy run down to the driver's side footboard. The power circuit is going to be going in the X50 fuse block, which is this guy right here. So we're going to get that apart. We're going to take a look, and we're going to see if the X5 connector C2 is present or not, and if not, then that'll be our battery positive voltage circuit. So 4 circuits that need to run to the hood, these 4 here, your ground, and then those other 2 circuits. Everything else is going to interconnect from the module that's on the driver's side running board to each side of the running board. So only 4 circuits we need to run to the front of the truck. So the X5 connector under the fuse block here is going to be this guy, and we're going to be looking at the C2 pin, and according to this layout, C1 is this first pin here, and then it jumps across to C3, so it's going to be the center pin on this connector here. So we'll take a look and we'll see what's there, and if it's not, we'll get it landed. So to remove the X50 fuse block, it's got 2 handles here, one on each side, and on the side of this thing there's going to be a little lock tab there. There's 2 on each side, so just take a flathead screwdriver, pop those off, and then these levers will pop out and off. There's also a top cover here that's going to be removed with these tabs, so you're going to remove the top cover first. And when you remove the top cover, you'll see all the fuses, and now you can lift these handles off to get this entire block out. So before we actually take the fuse block out, I wanted to show you here on the actual fuse panel itself. Fuse number 74 shows electric running boards, 30 amp fuse, and it's going to be this guy here. And looking at the actual fuse panel, it's this purple fuse 30 amp here. So this circuit is already a fused circuit that runs down and to the underside of this connector. So all we need to do is land that battery positive voltage to this side and down to the running board. And hopefully that should just be plug and play for that part. So since we need to get to this connector here, I'm not going to worry about taking the fuse block completely off. I think I can get access to what I need here. These connectors are going to be locked in by this little black tab. So you just need to push this connector in, and this guy essentially then will slide out. So see if I can do that here for you. So, and it just pops out just like that. So we're going to take the back cover off. We're going to explore our pins. And if I recall, it was going to be this pin right here. So we'll take a look and see if it's present. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the lug for this cable here so I can get this fuse block turned upside down, and just so I can verify the pin is actually underneath there and present. All right guys, I wanted to point out something very important here, and I'm glad I actually took that entire fuse block out. Earlier I had mentioned that the top right corner connector is the X5 according to this guy here, and so when I did some digging I noticed that the pin that I was looking for was not present, and when I did a cross-reference check on the actual fuse block it was. And so after doing some more digging I learned that this view is the bottom view. So essentially this box is upside down as you're looking at it. So the connector that we're going to want is going to be this guy here, and the way that I figured that out is in the fuse block I identified this fuse as fuse number 74 according to this drawing. So when I turn this box upside down, C2 is this connector right here, this pin right here. So it was kind of throwing me off as far as how we were looking at this. So looking at this fuse block directly like this corresponds to the drawing, but when we look at this side of the fuse block, it's upside down. So just take note as you're doing things, just to make sure that we are indeed landing in the right spot. And again, I did that by removing this fuse block and confirming that the fuse is this fuse up here, which corresponded to that connector and not the other connector. So the good news is that the terminal is there, the fuse is here, and the fuse pin on the back is present. So all we need to do at this point is just get the other connector landed from this guy going down into the driver's side board. So again, just take extra precaution when doing work like this to make sure that you are landing terminals into the correct spots. All right, so once we remove all of the tape, we can then remove the back cover. This back cover is just held on by these clips right here, so just pry that cover off, and that'll give you access to the back side of the connector. Lift the blue faceplate out so that you can insert your terminal, and I believe it's going to be A and C, so these two here, that's going to be our spot. So we'll take a look at the back, and we'll get that wire landed, and it should be C2, so it's going to be this terminal here is what we need to land. So just for an extra sanity check, I went ahead and I removed A1, I believe, which is going to be this first slot, and then because it's the same size terminal, I wanted to make sure that I can remove it so I can explore this terminal and just make sure that I've got the right terminal to land onto the spot where we need it to go. So I went ahead and pulled it out. There are additional tabs down in these cavities here, as you can kind of see down in that cavity. That tab has to be pushed up to be able to get that terminal out. So I'm gonna go do a quick check and just make sure I've got those terminals before I move forward. So I actually do have this terminal. It's by Mauser, and it is part number 13849935L. The L designates a loose piece or a loose terminal. So if you cannot find it in the -L, then you can just search for it by its parent part number there. So this is the terminal here. It looks to be a pretty close match to what we have here. So I think since I already have this open, I'm going to go ahead and run my battery positive voltage wire from here. We'll get it landed, and I'll just run enough of a length to run it down. We'll wrap it in some loom, and we'll get that prepped down to the driver's side footwell area. And I said footwell, I meant driver's side running board area down here on the outside. So we're just gonna run that down through the engine bay and out the back. All right, so I've got my terminal landed, and we're gonna land it again into that second slot. That's gonna be C2. The top slot where this yellow and green wire came out of is A2, so it goes A2, C2, and we'll get that ran down below. And before we actually land, I'm just going to verify that we are landing in the right spot. So as you can see, these are numbered A2, C2, D2, and then F2. And so I just wanted to be 100% certain where I'm landing. So C2 is where I'm going to want to go with this, and again, it's the second pin down. And as we're looking at this guy, it's going to be the first one and the second one down. So A2, I guess we skip B2 and we go to C2, so it goes A, C, D, and then F. So that second slot right there. And that's what it's gonna look like inserted. And we go to turn this around, and our terminal is in. So now we can put the faceplate back. I'll get this wire routed. We'll go down probably through the engine bay this way, and then to the back. We'll get it wrapped up with some automotive harness tape and a harness loom. So before I go to actually wrap this up here, I'm going to go ahead and run my two circuits that need to land into the X138 connector. And if you remember, that's going to be the running board disable circuit and the GM land circuit. So I'm going to run those two wires. We're going to land it onto this guy here. Same process. We're going to just open this housing up, land our terminals, and we'll get those two wires plus our positive wrapped up in harness loom, and then we'll take that down into the engine bay. All right, so I went ahead and removed the back cover to this guy, and all this was just a flathead screwdriver. Pop this little retainer tab off, and this whole piece comes off. There's a zip tie. Undo the zip tie. And to actually insert terminals into this guy, there's going to be that purple tab on the inside. You can see a notch up here at the top. Take a flathead screwdriver, and that goes up and it just slides all the way out, opening up the cavity for terminal insertion from the back on this guy. Now that we have the terminal position assurance connector taken off, that'll give us access to insert our terminals. On the back side, you're gonna see these green seal type plugs. Just take a pick tool, they just come out. And we're gonna be looking at, again, pins 39, which is this empty cavity here, and pin 8. So I've got 2 wires, a brown and green. The green is gonna be our GM land circuit, and the brown is going to be our running board disable. And we're gonna get those terminals crimped on and then landed. Once we get those 2 terminals landed, I will loom these 2 wires together, and we'll run that down into the engine bay. Okay, so for these terminals, these are, again, the same terminals that I use for the X500, X600 mirror upgrade harnesses at the door jamb. So in this case, you're gonna be looking at 962943-2. There's another alternate part number, 964263-2. Essentially, they're the same pins. The differences are these little crimp ends here. They call them the insulation tangs. So a couple of part numbers here for you, and that's going to be for the X138 connector. We've got the 2 circuits landed. The brown wire is on slot 39, and the green wire is on slot number 8. And if we look at this from the front, 39 is there, and 8 is there. So we'll get these connectors put back in, we'll put the housings back on, we'll get it zip tied and electrical tape just like it was before we started. And then we can now take these 3 wires and loom them together down into the engine bay and out to the back towards the driver's side running board. And so I've got everything back in place. I got my X5 connector back in. As you can see, I wrapped, zip tied, and I added some automotive harness tape for the power battery positive voltage. I've got my X138 connector back in place, and it's going to have its 2 wires coming out. So ultimately these 2 are going to meet up and then run down as one loom. We'll get this guy plugged in like so, and we'll get our fuse block back in. We'll add our lug back onto the panel, and we'll get this guy routed out to the back. So I've got everything nicely wrapped up with electrical tape. Everything's back in place. This is my wire loom now, and I've got this loomed up ready to go with my 3 wires. And all I need to do now is replace the fuse block. We'll get the lug back on. I'm going to use some of this plastic loom, and then we'll get that ran down towards the back. All right, so what I've done here is I've laid out the different requirements for getting this module interconnected with the running boards. So I went ahead and made up this drawing, and the 2 connections in the middle are the connectors on the module that comes pre-installed on the driver's side running board. So the module itself has some inputs and outputs. The larger connector here on the right is going to be represented by this connector here in the center, which is our X1 connector of the running board module. And so you've got an X1 connector, and then you've got an X2 connector. And the X1 connector is going to be the larger wires that interface between the left and the right sides of the running board. And so I made this diagram here to kind of showcase the ground positive and the GM land signals that come and actually go to the front of the truck, but the interconnects between the module and the 2 running boards. And so the connectors itself, these are the 2 connectors that plug in and made up with the module. And so these are from Yazaki Kaizen series connectors, part number 72835926-10. The terminals for this guy are going to be 7116-4150-202. And for the actual running board connector, so this is the guy that actually plugs into the running board, that's going to be 72825574-10. And then the corresponding terminals will be 7114-4151-02. Now I went ahead and got these from Nexus Electronics. If you search these part numbers, you'll find that there are going to be a limited supply of distributors that will carry this stuff. So I was able to find them from Nexus, and they were able to get it to me in about a week's turnaround time. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to get this guy, again, that's the X1 connector, pinned with, I'm going to start with the driver's side first. So I'm going to get these 2 wires onto the driver's side, and then all the other connections go into the other port. So we're gonna get that wired up. I just wanted to showcase the different connectors and terminals for this part. I forgot to mention the other connector that's going to be on this module, and that's going to be the X2 connector. And this is a 12-pin connector, and it's from Molex, this guy here. And the part number for this, I was able to get this from Mauser. Part number here is 33472-1206. And the corresponding terminals for this guy is going to be 33012-2003. And this one does have the LP designation, which stands for a loose piece. So those are the connectors and terminals for this guy. And I just wanted to point that out. I forgot to mention that earlier. So this is what the interconnect harness is going to look like. That goes from the module to the driver's side running board. And again, the connector on the right is going to have the main power and ground incoming and outgoing. And this is going to have the extend and retract signals that feed each of the running boards. And then all the other circuits in between are hitting the smaller connectors. So again, here's your drawing showing all of the connections. And the only thing left for me to do now to test is to land the ground onto ground chassis. And I've got a power battery positive voltage. So I've got to land this guy, battery positive, the GM LAN, and the running board disable. So I've got 3 circuits to land into this guy, and that should allow me to test the driver's side. So let's get that hooked up and we'll give it a shot. All right, so if you recall, these are the 3 circuits that come from the front of the truck: your battery positive, your GM LAN, and your running board disable. We're gonna get those wires landed into our connector and we'll get it plugged in and tested. All right guys, I've got this temporarily wired up and I am ready to test this guy out. Here we go. Doors are unlocked. There it is, guys. No BCM programming required. Well, that concludes the installation on the driver's side. Now all that is left for me to do here is to get the passenger side wired up. And if we take a quick walk around to the passenger side, so I've got it physically installed. They are in the extended mode right now. So I just need to get that wiring from the driver's side over to this side and get it wired up. If you have any questions, guys, about this mod, please check out the forum at gmtrucks.com. I'll have a link in the description, and I'll have the wiring diagrams as well for you guys to take a look. Thanks again for watching, guys. This is P. Gamboa. Until next time, see ya.